Hello, welcome to Spotlight, shining on the island's art scene like the Star of Bethlehem.
Spotlight, brought to you by the Isle of Man Arts Council.
This evening it's all change for Centre Stage Productions. We get saucy, or is that toilety, with Jan Allison again. Easily offended, should find their muffs. And a little more from Maurice after he hung up his baton. Remember, do get in touch with any creative artistic endeavours you might be involved in planning, hoping to create, or would really like to put in the spotlight. Poetic, theatrical, musical, literary, ceramic, sculpture, drag, film, mime, social media, punk, naughty poems. They're all there. Lots of others as well. Email me, Howard Kane with an E at manxradio.com, spotlight at manxradio.com. I'd love to hear from you. No holds barred, as they say on this show. If it fits into the artistic category, we will feature you. So, you might well have read or seen on social media that one of several big shows coming to the Gaiety stage next year in what is lining up to be quite a year for amateur productions on the Isle of Man. And by amateur, I mean unpaid actors and actresses, rather than any reference to the standard of the shows, which is sky high. Anyway, this was scheduled to be Titanic the Musical, staged by Centre Stage Productions. However, it's just been announced this has been changed. Quite unusual. To find out more, I spoke to Centre Stage committee members Peter Shimon and Meg Walter.
It's been quite a lot of decision-making going into this, but we decided, having previously announced we were going to do Titanic in October 2025, Titanic the Musical, we've decided to pivot, and we are now doing The Band, which is the official Take That musical, in the same dates in October 2025.
OK, so quite a big decision to take. What was the reasoning behind it?
So, we kind of announced Titanic and we kind of just felt something didn't quite feel right about it, I think, for us as a committee for a little while. And then we found the band and we just thought, this offers a lot more exciting and dynamic opportunities for both performers and audiences. And the rights were available. It was kind of just right there for us, and we thought, do you know what? This just feels right.
And it's got a bit of a tie-in as well, I think, with someone who is actually touring.
It does, actually. Gary Barlow himself is on his way over, which was quite a funny coincidence, actually, because we had the rights sorted and everything, and then we just hadn't announced that it was going to be the show, and then we were all just on social media one day, and there's Gary Barlow coming to the island, and we thought, wow, just perfect timing.
It does. It aligns really well, and we were so ready for our announcement to use some of the Gary Barlow's son memes, but it didn't feel quite as appropriate to do so.
So tell us a little bit about the band itself then, for those who don't know the show. I think the name rings a bell, but I couldn't tell you more than that off the top of my head. Yeah,
so I suppose the name of the band would imply that it's kind of recreating Take That itself, and you're going to find out the story of the members of Take That, and it's not really about that. It was really important for us this year to look at putting women's stories first and the female experience, and this show actually more focuses around a group of fans. It's 5 teenage girls who are fans of the band. It's kind of like an unnamed, undescriptive group of young male performers that make up the band, rather than it being specifically Take That, although they do sing all of Take That's repertoire. So it follows these 5 teenage girls and their love of the music, and then it revisits them 25 years later when they've grown into women, where maybe they've drifted apart since then, and how they kind of reconnect through their love of the music of this band.
Timings-wise, then, are the dates and the rehearsal, the whole schedule, is that being shifted as well, or is that staying much the same?
No, that'll stay the same. Our audition information, everything will be announced probably in the new year. But the show will be in October, just like it always is for us. People usually know that our centre stage shows are October. That'll be exactly the same.
Now, obviously, the band are the central part of the production, I assume. Is it a large cast overall, or relatively small compared to, say, something like School of Rock?
I'd say it's kind of a medium cast. It's smaller than School of Rock in that we had a huge group of youth performers in School of Rock, and for the purpose of, child performance licensing, we needed twice the amount of children than there were in the script. With this show, it is a bit more of an ensemble piece. So you've got those 5 teenage girls, 4 of them as older women, and then a couple of male parts who are the supporting characters. So it's smaller, but I'm thinking that we will probably look to build a bit of an ensemble around that. So kind of the true ensemble, background scenes, small voice roles, maybe getting a few solo lines in there as well.
Yeah, it kind of gives scope to just kind of add what we want ensemble wise, and I think a good part about it is, even though it might be a smaller sort of overall cast than say School of Rock, there's a lot of opportunities for performers. Like there's a lot of nice roles for people rather than just sort of one lead role. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's nice to sometimes have more chances for more people on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Music is a big element for it, of course. So do we know at this stage, is the music, we're talking about sort of backing tracks? We're talking about live musicians on stage in the pit? How's that working?
Yeah, it'll definitely be a live band. We're putting together our production team at the moment, and associated with that will be all of the behind the scenes people, so costume, makeup, all of the stage props and stage management, and indeed the orchestra or the band, as it will be, that'll be put together by our musical director. Thinking ahead to auditions, I would expect probably there might be some Take That songs in our audition materials. People might want to start brushing up on their Take That. But yeah, for the actual performances, it'll be a live band.
You're mentioning auditions there. What's the audition process then? Is this going to be starting early in the new year?
The sort of process of it, that'll be sort of decided by the production team. But yeah, the usual sort of learn a bit of music, learn a bit of script, maybe some dancing, especially for those boy band wannabes. I imagine there'll be a little bit of dancing.
I'm just envisioning people, we get a row of chairs, stools lined up, and people have to dramatically rise in the middle of a song in line with the key changes. So it'll be a very fun experience. We like to keep our auditions inclusive, friendly to everybody. We would encourage anyone, whether they're really experienced in theatre and musical theatre, or whether it's the first time they've ever wanted to do it, maybe Take That will draw a lot of people out of the woodwork who want to get involved, and we're really supportive of that. Centre Stage is really about introducing new talent to the stage and giving people an opportunity to shine, to use a Take That quote.
Good.
Quite right too. And are either of you actually familiar with the production?
I've actually seen it when I was away at university. That was sort of when it first came about. I think I'm not entirely sure on what year it was released, but it was on its UK tour when I was at uni, so I went to watch with my mum, because I actually took my mum to actually see Take That for her birthday one year, so she loved it.
Good present.
And yeah, so I've actually seen it, and what I really liked was that obviously I do like Take That, but they're not sort of necessarily my generation's boy band, but because it's not really sort of focused on Take That specifically, even though it's the music, you can sort of apply any boy band to it, and those sort of feelings of nostalgia from when you were younger, whether it's One Direction or The Wanted or any of those sort of boy bands, that feeling you get from their music and the friendships that you have with it, you can sort of apply any of it to it, and it's one of those shows where it's feel good but it's emotional. It's just sort of got everything. I really enjoyed watching it.
Excellent. And I'd also say this show is called The Band. When it went out on the UK tour, it was called Greatest Days instead. And there is a film that came out last year called Greatest Days. That film, Greatest Days, is the story of the musical. It's got, I'm going to get her name wrong, it's Aisling Bea.
Yeah.
Plays the lead character in that. And if anyone's looking to find out exactly what the show is about, that movie, Greatest Days, is basically the stage musical put on film. So I've watched that several times, laughed along, sang along, maybe had a few tears as well.
Sounds excellent. Best of luck with it. No doubt we'll talk more about it in the ensuing months. In the meantime, though, anyone listening to this might be thinking, oh yeah, that sounds right up my street. I can imagine quite a few folk doing it. Where do they find out more? Best places, socials, or where?
Yeah, probably social media. So our Instagram is Centre Stage Productions IOM, and on Facebook we're Centre Stage Productions. We do have a website, which is, I think it's actually not Centre Stage Productions, it's manxg&s.com, which is left over from when we were the Gilbert and Sullivan Society. But if you just search Centre Stage Productions IOM, you'll find us, or you can email us at centre-stage-productions@outlook.com.
Check out their socials, as Peter says, if you want to know more. It sounds like a great show. No doubt we'll hear more about that production in months to come. Apparently, I'm too old to audition for a boy band. I'll just have to wait for the stage production of the, Best Exotic Marigold Hotel or something.
Spotlight. Brought to you by the Isle of Man Arts Council.
Now, fair warning, those of a delicate disposition might want to turn away for a second, or turn the volume down, or perhaps check out a classic Spotlight podcast, as the next item does contain, wait for it, the odd rude word, a bit of sauciness, and toilet humour. Ooh, Mrs. Regular listeners will remember Jan Allison on this programme some time back, here to talk about a love of saucy, cheeky and rude humour and how it had led her to publish a collection of verse, particularly to help her through a bit of a tricky time in her life. And purely, she said, with the aim of just putting a smile on the faces of those who like such humour. Not everyone does, we know, but it seems there are quite a few who do, as she's just released a second volume. She told me more when she dropped by earlier this week.
It was just about 11 months ago. I wrote a book that's called A Giggle a Day Can Chase the Blues Away, and you were very kind and did a couple of podcasts on it in January. So it went out on Amazon on the 7th of December last year, and I've now published a second book, which is quite amazing for somebody who hated poetry at school and didn't start writing until 2013. So,
and what was it inspired? Because you were saying when your husband was undergoing some cancer treatment, was that it was something that kept you going there or started?
The first poem I wrote was actually when he was under the knife at Arrow Park Hospital in the Wirral, and I'd never written before, and it was a sad poem, a dark poem called Splendid Isolation. I was all alone and I didn't know what was going to happen, and I think it was just a release from that. But I knew my aunt and my uncle both wrote naughty poetry, especially limericks, which is my favourite form. And then I discovered that my mum and her mum also had written poetry when they were younger, but I didn't know anything about that until after my father died in 2015. And we never saw any of the poems. So obviously it was in my genes, but it just took that event for it to come out. And now I just try and make people smile with silly poetry.
Which is what it's all about. And as you said at the beginning there, from the outset, yes, it is saucy, it's a bit rude, it's risque. It's obviously not going to appeal to everyone, but I mean, nothing appeals to everyone in any case in my book. So it's a case of, if you don't like that sort of poetry, the saucy, risque, seaside postcard stuff, as you say, maybe it's not for you. But on the other hand, if you do, then this could be a bag. It's all there, as you say, just to bring a smile to your face. And like I said, you've been inspired so much that basically you've now got a second volume hitting the shelves.
Yes, the first book had 365 poems. It was called A Giggle a Day Can Chase the Blues Away, but it had that extra one for leap year. And this one is called Toilet Humour and Risque Rhymes.
Well, you can't mistake the title.
No, it's in, and it carries a rude humour warning as well, as does the other book. It's not for everyone. If you're prudish, then it's not for you.
Stay away if you don't like it.
Exactly. Yeah. But I'm just trying to make people smile. And I must tell you, Howard, that after the last podcast, which was January this year, I'd given an email address and I got contacted by a lovely man on the island called Chris Kilford, and he messaged me and said, could I have a signed copy of your book? So we arranged to meet at the Steam Packet, and I met him and his wife Julie. This was on the Saturday. On the Monday he messaged me and said, can I have 2 more signed copies of your book? So we arranged to meet the following Saturday at the Steam Packet, and I arrived, and then Julie said to me, did you get our email? I said, no, I didn't read it. Oh, we wanted a 4th copy. And in the end, they bought 8 signed copies because they just loved the humour and they wanted to share it with friends and family. So, yes, humour can sell, and I just try and make people smile.
Which is what it's all about, I must admit. And you self-publicise as well, so it's, not only do you do all the writing, obviously all the poetry, but then you actually do all the grafting, really, to actually get the books out there for people to read.
That's true, and I've got to give a shout out to a lovely young lass called Isabel Lyon, who has done the illustrations. There's a few illustrations in the book, and she illustrated the first book as well. And I had the cover done on a site called Fiverr, and I had the same man do the cover because he just got the humour, which is really, really good.
Is it sort of, you were mentioning there it might be in the genes, but have you always enjoyed the sort of, that sort of saucy, risque, and the Isle of Man's had a long connection with this? I think my dad used to be on the old postcard censorship committee, which would have those saucy seaside postcards with the busty ladies and the sort of the rather lecherous looking men on them back in the day. But has that always been your sort of bag humour-wise?
I'd say yes, but it never came out until I started writing the poetry. poetry, and I post on a site called Poetry Soup in America. And I was a total novice to poetry. I actually hated poetry at school. It just wasn't my thing at all. And now I love it so much that I just can't help writing as many poems as I can. I've learnt lots and lots of different styles. I'd never heard of haiku, and I've written haiku. I've had some published in Haiku Journal. But my forte, I discovered, was limericks. I love writing saucy limericks.
And you were saying that, do you think you have moved on or developed within the, notwithstanding the risque content and such like, but as a poet, as a writer, do you feel you sort of changed over the years you've been doing it?
I've been writing now since 2013, and I've written all styles of poetry, but I developed they do online contests on Poetry Soup, and I developed an aptitude for writing limericks. I'd never written limericks before, and now I've written probably in excess of maybe about 1,500. I can write one in a minute. And I just find it so easy, and just the humour and the rhyme. I do use a tool called Rhyme Zone if I get stuck for rhyming, but more often than not, it just flows. And I can actually wake up in the morning with a full limerick in my head. And my husband's been brilliant. He's set a voice recording app on my phone, so I can lie in bed under the covers and whisper my poems into it, and then go back to sleep.
That is the way to do it. Yeah, that's the modern day notepad on the bedside table, isn't it? Just having it there and being able to record. Let's hear one, because and then we'll talk about where you might be able to get it. Now, obviously, as we say, the very nature of a lot of the poetry, we probably wouldn't get away with playing it on Spotlight one way or another. However, there are a few we can actually use. So I think there's one there which we can hear, a nice little short one.
Yes, this one's called Jimmy Riddle, and it's in the toilet humour section of the book. The book's actually in two sections, toilet humour and risque rhymes, but we've just gone for the toilet humour section. It's up to other people whether they delve into the poetry more deeply. This is called Jimmy Riddle. I'm hoping to be a teacher's pet by reciting my alphabet. My teacher said to me, Jimmy, you missed out P. I'm crying and very upset. My teacher, her name is Miss Clegg, said, Jimmy, tell me, I won't beg. Where is the missing P? I said, Miss, can't you see? It's running down my trouser leg.
It is very seaside saucy
Definitely
postcard, yeah.
seaside saucy humour.
Definitely that sort of stuff. Now then, the crucial question, of course, is where, if people do like, this tickles their funny bone, where are people able to get a copy of the new book?
Right, well, there's a lovely lady in Castletown called Di, and she runs Cree Bray, which is a gift shop in the square in Castletown. I can also sell signed copies if you contact me at janathepoet@gmail.com, and it's also available on Amazon. And if you type in ASINBODP2WMHPR, then you'll find my book Toilet Humour and Risque Rhymes by Jan Allison, and it's the price is $9.99. And Toilet Humour and Risque Rhymes had to be the second book, because that's the type of humour that appeals to me. And yes, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but if you enjoy a giggle, then I would advise you to get the book. And I've already had... the book went live on Amazon on the 30th of November, and I've already had 3 5-star reviews from people who enjoy the humour.
Excellent. And of course, $1 million question, I suppose, is you've done 2 books now. Do you think can you see yourself doing another volume?
For somebody who absolutely hated poetry at school to have even written 1 book, let alone 2, no, there won't be a 3rd book. I'll just continue to post on Poetry Soup.
Excellent. Well, many congratulations. Let's finish off with another poem.
This is another one from the toilet humour section of the book, and it's called Bath Time Blunder. And both of these 2 poems that I've read out have been illustrated by Isabel Lyon. I'm bathing new granddaughter Kay. Door opens. I've shocked daughter Faye. Mum, you've made a huge gaff. That's not her baby bath. You're bathing her in the bidet.
Speaking as someone who the first time we saw a bidet washed his hair in it kind of stick, I can appreciate that one.
Yes, or you could wash your feet in it as well, Howard.
Jan, well done. Many thanks for popping up again.
Thanks ever so much, Howard. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, of course, it's not everyone's cup of tea. We know that, I know that, Jan knows that. But if you don't like that sort of humour, then fine, you won't want to buy the book. If you do, it's good for a giggle, as Jan says, and just trying to make a few folk of similar dispositions smile is no bad thing in my book. I've got a terribly mucky sense of humour, though, so I'll say no more. Speaking of mucky senses of humour, we heard from the irrepressible Maurice Powell a week or two back, or Mozzles, as he's affectionately known in these parts. Maurice recently decided to step down from being MD of the Manx Symphony Orchestra. I caught up with him shortly after he retired and had a chat about his musical life and the orchestra itself, and I did have a pertinent question for him. Reference the island's own symphony orchestra. Do you think the orchestra stands up well then with sort of any amateur orchestra sort of in Britain around? Because it's, again, obviously we have the symphony orchestra here, but as you say, it's a tiny community, really, 85,000 people. Do you think it would stand up well with any of the orchestras you might have witnessed round about the sort of the British Isles?
Yes, I mean, when I sort of lived in Yorkshire, I played with the orchestras in Leeds and Harrogate, innumerable shows, Bradford, Leeds, everywhere, even Gilbert and Sullivan in Buxton, and they were all using sort of good amateur or semi-professional musicians, and certainly our orchestra is the equal of those. But I like to think that we've managed to mould really good performances in which we bring something new, even to a popular piece like a Beethoven symphony or something like that. I've always been my particular thing is to go back into the history of these works and try and think, well, what did the composer really have in mind? What did this sound like? I mean, we know that Beethoven's symphonies, say, for example, the Fifth Symphony, was a bit of a surprise to the audience when they first heard it. But why? So how do you make a well-known piece like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony make the audience sit up and think, well, I never heard that before? That's what I've always tried to do. Not for me to say whether it's been successful, but between you and me, Howard, I'm very pleased with it.
That's what we like to hear. Can we say then who you will, or to whom you'll be passing on the baton?
To know one particular person at the moment, the orchestra has three really conductors. Bernard Osborne, of course, has been my deputy conductor for some time, and in recent years has always conducted the summer concert. That gave me a little bit of time off in the year for some writing and research. But now we have Nigel Harrison, who takes one concert a year, and Graham Kirkland, who takes a concert. So I imagine between the three of them, they'll sort it out and they'll do a concert each, perhaps. Eventually, I suppose the orchestra will have to decide on a general musical director, because I think probably that is the way it works best. Eventually you get someone then that lives with the orchestra for a number of years, gets to know the players, gets to know very intimately what they can really do, and can mould the programmes in that way. So I don't know, but for the time being, I think the orchestra are finding it refreshing to have a different face for every concert, and it seems to be working well.
And you've been steeped in music all your life, and as I mentioned there, well known as well, not just for either performing or conducting or being, like I said, in charge of the symphony orchestra, but also for writing, and that you've, I think, done several works. And is it something you want to carry on, or maybe it will free you up now to have more time to do more research and some of your musical writing?
Well, it certainly will free me up to do more research. I mean, there's a cautionary tale here, is never pull a tiny thread that looks interesting, because you never know what's on the end of it. And I pulled a tiny thread when I started hearing a little bit about the brother of the composer Hayden Wood, who we know very well, of course, Roses of Picardy and so on and so forth. And I started looking into his brother Harry, who I realised lived here for 50 years. I mean, who'd heard of Harry Wood? And was the general musical director of the Palace and Derby Castle Company, and so on and so forth. And once I started to tug at that particular thread, that ended up in the book Manx Land's King of Music. And And there was an enormous amount of information about him. He was in the papers every week for 50 years. And he was into everything, not just during the summer seasons, but he lived here. He was in charge of the concerts during the winter, which, sadly, we don't have quite so many now, but nevertheless, it's a lively scene here still. But he was in charge, had a finger in every pie. Remarkable character. He died in 1938, on Christmas Day, 1938. Hayden Wood lived on another 10 years. And Hayden Wood, of course, came to the island every year, mainly to play golf with his brother, but also to conduct the orchestras here. And he wrote a lot of pieces, of course, based on traditional Manx music, which are still popular today. But, I mean, that's where it kind of started. And then I've written, I don't know how many pieces, 50 or 60, I don't know, for Culture Vannin on various aspects of music on the island, not just music for the summer seasons, but all sorts of concerts and things that suddenly sort of pricked my interest. But I mean, the island has an incredible musical, cultural legacy. I mean, in addition to the traditional music, which is a very vibrant scene at the moment, once you start looking back, you realise, what an incredible place this was and still is.
Hope to see you maybe occasionally standing in, or perhaps blowing your own horn, as they say, in within the ranks of the orchestra itself, and more musical works coming up as well.
You never know.
I do hope we'll see Maurice around in years to come, and of course we wish him all the best in his semi-retirement in any case. That's about it this week. If you want to hear anything again, go to manxradio.com, download the Spotlight podcast, listen where and when you want. Why not try it whilst trying to get your nutcracker to work without breaking your fingers? One for Jan there, I think. See you next week, when Peter Shimon will reappear, but with a different hat on. He's a busy chap. See you then, whatever you're doing, be creative about it. He moo.